What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Planet Soccer Podcast, take 2. Really 3, I guess. We've entered low data mode on this Super Bowl Wednesday in the Premier League as the Arsenal Cannons take on the Manchester City Blue Boats later today. Still that off TikTok. Dylan, hopefully we can get through this one without any technical difficulties. My Wi-Fi is just crapping out again. So today we're talking about another U.S. men's national team coaching candidate. It's kind of a mouthful. This would be the home run hire in terms of namesake, if you will. Today we're talking about the great one, Jose Mourinho. He is currently the coach of AS Roma. However, his contract ends next summer, and he's kind of hinted at the possibility of wanting to do the international thing, if you will. It's kind of like you said in our previous recording, his last mountain to climb in his career. Dylan, as we've done in the previous 3, why don't you just take us through kind of his playing career, albeit short, and then his coaching career, which has been very long.
Yeah, he's of Portuguese descent, as we'll probably talk about here later a little bit. And as you said, very short playing career, only ever played in 94 matches as a professional. But then got into coaching pretty short thereafter, starting at Benfica, where he didn't have a ton of success, at least by Benfica standards in Portugal. But then he went to a bit smaller club, and then his kind of coming out party began at Porto, where, and I want to say it was 2003-04 range, he won that Champions League with Porto, which winning Champions League with a Portuguese side is absolutely incredible. Very uncommon to see anybody win it outside of the big 4,
especially in the modern era, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And then
Wikipedia calls the 03-04 season for him the Champions League miracle season. So
yeah, and it really was. It really was, and that was kind of his coming out party. From there, he went on to win, I think, 6 total trophies at Porto.
Dylan, do you know who Mourinho's Porto beat in that Champions League final?
I do not. I wish I
Monaco.
Did, I was definitely.
We had a Monaco Porto Champions League final.
That is fantastic.
That would be so
we will
fun.
Never see the likes of that
Never.
Again. Like, we thought we were getting very lucky with Napoli, and it's not like Napoli's even a small side. Then they kind of laid an egg on us. But after Porto, he infamously went to Chelsea, where he actually spent 2 different stints there. Won a whole lot of trophies.
All of his fun quotes come from.
Yeah, right. That's where he really kind of became the manager on and off the field that we know and normally most of us sometimes love. But he also, I fell in love with him when he went to Inter. That's kind of my fondest club football memory was the Inter Champions League victory that he led them to. And then also spent time at Man U, won a couple trophies there, spent time at Real Madrid, won a handful of trophies there, went to Spurs. Yeah, didn't win trophies there. Just had to double check. I can never remember if Spurs win trophies or not. And then, as you said,
he's the Newcastle fan.
And then, as you said, he's now at Roma, and has had quite a bit of success. Looking like they may have a Champions League berth on their hands at the end of this year. Overall, he's coached over 1,100 matches now, I think. Win percentage is 65%. Win percentage is 65%. One of the things I also noticed in kind of doing a deep dive on his career, and he's known for this, but I didn't really know the numbers behind it. I didn't, correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't notice anywhere or any time where he stayed anywhere more than 3.5 years. Granted, he went back to Chelsea for a second stint, but he's never held the same job for more than 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And
kind of
looking at my calendar, that fits our timeline perfectly. So do you have any other stuff you want to touch on about kind of his coaching history? Do you want to spend some time talking about him as a guy? If you have any fun, crazy Jose quotes, I mean, we could have a 45-minute episode on just Jose quotes, but do you have anything else you want to add before we kind of dive into him and how he may or may not fit into the U.S. side?
I have a Dylan Wilcox tidbit for you. Do you know who Jose Mourinho kind of gave this player. Do you know? Let me rephrase. Do you know what player Jose Mourinho somewhat gave that player start to? It's one of your guys.
Oh, Balotelli at Inter.
Balotelli. Yep.
Yeah, and he was also when we get into the why it might not work. One of my concerns is how he handled Balotelli and what came of it. I
Kicked
think
him off the
Balotelli
bus
might
at
have
one
been
point.
so far off the deep end that there was nobody who could save him. But I do. He's very notorious for falling out with some players.
Yeah.
And yeah, his time with Balotelli, while Balotelli was extremely gifted on the field, did not end as I would have wished.
Yeah.
But
let's go ahead and get into why it would and wouldn't work if you want to. Like you said, we could go on and on about his previous. Well, actually, you posed a question to me yesterday when we were. Do you want to talk about that?
yeah,
I can't see you if you're nodding your head. Like I said, we're on low data mode, so I can just see myself, and I look real good today. But Dylan,
which question
throughout
was that? I asked you a couple of questions, I feel like.
the number of trophies as his career has
yeah.
gone on. Do you want to wait until we talk about why that won't work, or do it now?
Yeah, no, we can do it now. Kind of
Okay.
put a nice little bow on his coaching career. But you do notice, and I noticed it when I really started kind of typing out for my outline, his decline of trophies at each stop he kind of goes to. And I posed the question to you yesterday when we knew we were going to be recording this today, if there were any thoughts that you had with that, if it was a cause for concern for you. I personally don't know how to feel. I was kind of trying to default to you on that one. So if you do have feelings one way or another, is there anything that is telling or isn't telling to you there?
So there's countless YouTube videos out there about the way Jose Mourinho sets up and the way he set up at different clubs, and then kind of how his setup is related to the world of soccer, not to the world, to the style of play of European soccer throughout the years. And it, like Antonio Conte, to reference Tottenham, his system, the way he plays, is considered a bit outdated in today's landscape.
Yeah.
I think it works now, funny enough, with smaller sides. I think despite the lack of trophies at Roma was never going to win Serie A. They were never, whatever. Getting into the Champions League is like Roma's trophy in this situation. And I think his style works with teams like that, but he wouldn't go back to Chelsea now and win in England. He wouldn't go back to Inter now and win with those players. So I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, because I think it could lend itself very well to the talent level that the U.S. has. It's kind of honestly an AS Roma type of talent level on the international stage, maybe a little bit better. Obviously, he does have players that stand out and players that have that are better than anything the U.S. has. You got Dybala, who is on Argentina's bench, barely played in the World Cup, and he's one of, I don't think he's hurt right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's been one of the key contributors for Roma this year. But really his style of play, and he plays kind of that slower type of, not slower, but just more defensive style of soccer. And it's a little bit boring to watch it at points, but if you look at it also, like Didier Drogba had his best season under Mourinho with that setup. So it can work. But will it work for the US? I don't know. We can talk about why he would be a great hire. And that can kind of lead into that.
I think from a tactical standpoint, one of the things that I do like about him is, as you said, this Roma comparison. I've seen it made a lot, and I quite agree with it. We're in similar situations where there is certainly talent to be had on the U.S. men's national team, on AS Roma, but it's not that close to the cream of the crop in Italy or in Europe at Roma. And we're not close to cream of the crop in all of international football. We're probably both in the top 10 percentile of our given competitions. So I think there is a lot of similarities there as far as talent level goes. And one of the things that he is notorious for is his ability to recognize opponent weaknesses and his own team's weaknesses and strengths and build a game plan and a strategy around that. One thing that I've seen some people knock him for this hire, they think he'll get kind of bored with the slow pace of international football, just playing so few games, getting so little time with your players. But I think it would be a really unique opportunity for him to do a deep dive, the deepest of dives. Not that other managers haven't and don't try to do this, but really sit down and deeply analyze tactically what works well against other sides and what doesn't. And that's the type of stuff we're going to have to see happen, and stuff we'll have to have in our back pocket if we are really going to try and compete with, the clubs we're going to have to beat if we want to make a quarterfinal or semifinal run in 26. And I think he's the perfect guy to find those weaknesses and exploit them, especially if you give him months in between matches, or months to prepare for the World Cup itself.
Once to piggyback off of that, before you move on from this point, we I forgot what episode it was, but we referenced what South Korea did in the build up to 2002. The way they, we wouldn't be able to do that with our players, but they shut down their league. The coach had them for months and months and months before the World Cup happened. And I think Jose could do a similar thing without the players, but really take a deep dive and really get prepared for these opponents, and just have us tactically set up in a way that gives us the best chance of success. I think,
and not that other managers don't try and do that, but right. I just think he has the ability to do it better than anybody else, especially given
he's managed 1,000+ matches. Yeah.
And won 65% of them, won countless trophies. Yeah. Like, he is the most decorated club coach out there right now, and that's certainly one of the appeals.
Since Ferguson,
and for me, when there are people that question if he fits, or if it makes sense, or if he could be a good international coach, I'm like, let's sit back for a second. Let's look at our past coaches that we've hired, and our most successful one has been Bruce Arena, took us to a quarterfinal. And where did he coach before? He coached at DC United and some college. I don't even remember where. Coach was a college coach and took us to a quarterfinal run. So like we've just never had the opportunity to hire somebody with this cachet or this resume. And we've had success with guys who have had much less experience, especially even on the international level. Again, Bruce Arians had no international experience before he was given the job. And now U.S. soccer is in a very, very different place than it was in 2001 or whenever he was hired, leading up to that World Cup. So very different landscape, obviously. But I don't think that the lack of international experience should be an immediate disqualification for him, because we have seen a lot of success in the past. Right, exactly.
And he's coached in, what is it now, 3 different countries, all across Europe, all which are countries that you're probably going to have to, if Italy decides to make the World Cup in 2026, they're all countries that you're going to have to face and be familiar with. And we talked about how Jim Curtin doesn't have any European experience, and Jose Mourinho, albeit it's not international experience, it's the complete opposite. He knows the style of play of every country pretty much. He's faced them in the Champions League. He's coached in their leagues. He's coached the players. He knows how those players come up in those countries. So I think it offers a very, very highly competitive advantage for the U.S. From a background standpoint. Also, one thing I want to get into, unless you have anything that you wanted to keep going with on that.
No, you're good. You're good.
So, and you might have had this on your list. I didn't look at your outline or anything. So sorry you did all that work for me not to look at it. But we can kind of piggyback from this into why it wouldn't work also. But one thing that Jose Mourinho has been knocked for a bit is he's a coach that has to have a $250 million transfer window every window. And looking at him with Roma right now, part of the reason why he might not work with Roma past this summer is because of Roma's debt. They signed Dybala last summer. They're not going to have the kind of money to sign players like Dybala this summer. And I think on the club level, Jose Mourinho is really going to be frustrated if he's going into the Champions League, or if he knows he's going to be going into the Champions League without the ability to sign players. Going to the international side, I wonder if we're going to see a different Jose Mourinho, knowing that, okay, there's no transfer window. There's nothing like that for him to be all hoopla about not spending, not doing this. Like, your roster's fixed. You're, for the most part, your squad is fixed. Your talent pool is fixed. Do we see a different Jose Mourinho on that side if he does choose to leave Roma? Because the Friedkin group, I think that's how you pronounce it, the Friedkin group, they're trying to run Roma more economically now, and that's gonna lead to some low transfer budgets here moving forward in the next couple windows, in order to reduce the club debt. But he came in, he shattered the glass ceiling that Roma had, which is what they brought him in to do, and they brought him in to be a short-term fix, to fix the culture, and he's done that, which I think is what we've talked about it, what we need in the U.S. international system. We need that glass ceiling shattered. Henry would do it. Mourinho would certainly do it. So I know I gave you a lot to talk about there, but what are your thoughts on all of that mumble jumble of info that I just threw out?
I think I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I do think we are reaching our glass ceiling, and we've talked about that. This golden generation. This last World Cup was not a complete disappointment, but another round of 16 exit, so nothing overly exciting, obviously.
Yeah.
Kind of the status quo for us. So if we do want to break through, I think we need to not be looking at the Curtins, the Marshes, because those just feel like very stale U.S. Soccer Federation hires, and we've seen what that gets us. It gets us a team that most World Cups that they make will probably get out of the group, but that's about it. Maybe we'll make a quarterfinal run every now and then. I think with the amount of talent we have right now and the amount of talent we, in theory, will have 5, 10, 20 years from now, quarterfinals need to be like our bare minimum. Like, anything less than quarterfinal, I want people to go home feeling disappointed. And obviously the players, regardless, feel disappointed when they get bounced, but I want it to be like, all right, we need to make some drastic changes if we're not making it out of the quarterfinals in back-to-back World Cups, if we're not making Gold Cup finals or winning the qualification,
maybe Copa America
in
finals,
CONCACAF or Copa America. That would be wild, and I think that's another thing that could attract him. That's another thing that I think it gives him something almost every year to look forward to and to compete, and not having to go just through a boring World Cup CONCACAF qualification schedule that doesn't really matter because the field is bigger. We're hosts. Like, none of that matters right now. So it does give him kind of fun, exciting challenges if he can lead a U.S. team down or hosting into Copa America, though, and make a real run to the semifinals or finals. Like, that is a major feather in the cap for him. So I do think if we want to really get out of this status quo, for me, it's Henry or Jose. I mean, those are my two favorite. I think Marsh would be my favorite status quo hire. But as you said, if we want to kind of break through this little ceiling we've put ourselves under, we got to do something different,
both on the field and off the field glass ceiling that we're under. I feel like Jose would just completely shatter those.
It immediately brings huge respect on the global stage. Yes, there will be people on Twitter and fans that laugh and mock Jose and say, wow, this must be some crazy money or something like that. But I think overall it immediately makes people put a little extra respect on the U.S. name.
Yeah, I agree. What, as far as negatives, other than what we've kind of mentioned, do you see in Jose Mourinho's hire? I think one right off the bat, we talked on the unreleased Jim Curtin episode that'll come out later about our new sporting director. I don't know if he can handle Jose Mourinho, sitting in an interview room saying, why are you good? I don't know how that process would go, but it just seems weird to me, what do you think as far as... Go ahead.
I almost agree. It was a positive. I just said it would bring all of this respect on the world stage. He might be too big for us right now. Just like Curtin said, flat out said, I think I am not qualified enough, or I'm not ready for this. I think this might be too big of a job for Jose. And
Too
there are
small of a
some
job for Jose.
positive. Yes, I'm sorry. He's too big for this job. I do think that worries me a little bit, where he is just this grandiose character of football. As I said, in my opinion, the most accomplished, the best active manager. I think Pep might be a better manager, but he's certainly accomplished more than almost every active manager. And
But he's not a
because of
magician.
his, yeah, he says he's not a magician. I think he could be for us,
Yeah.
but he does quickly lose the he falls out of the good graces of fans and players and cities quite quickly, and that's part of the reason he doesn't have very long at very many jobs. And we saw the whole Reina fiasco, if you will, and I would be hesitant to know if he would handle it any better than it was already being handled. He would certainly handle it differently than it had been handled, but I don't know if it necessarily would be better. I do think
I think it would have been
American
more explosive.
athletes. It would have been very entertaining. We could have done multiple episodes on it. It would have been great for the radio, TV, podcast world. But as far as like building a really sound and quality culture, I do have some concerns about that, because it isn't something where you can just sell a player. Like you said, you have Gio Reyna, you have to use Gio Reyna. You have to find a way to make him fit personality wise, on the field wise. You can't just ship him off on loan or sell him in the summer. Like, you are limited in what you have at your disposal, so you can't fall out of
And what you
favor.
can dispose of.
Right, yeah.
Like
So
you
you
said.
can't just completely piss off a dressing room, and have guys not want to play for you, because you can't just replace them. Like, that's just not
Yeah.
a thing you can do on the international level. So that scares the ever living daylights out of me. However, I am a firm believer that he is a magician. I am a firm believer that he knows exactly what he's doing when he, goes at it with Pogba and Shaw at Man U, or Balotelli at Inter. Like, he knows exactly what he's doing. I think he's one of the smartest football minds in the world. So I don't think he would behave the same. I truly think he is so good at what he does on a club level, that it's not just 100% his personality. I do think there's a lot of thought that goes behind it. I do think he's a very pensive type person. So I do think if he did come to the international side, especially with the U.S. side, which we've seen some of our players are a little, I don't know, lack of a better term, soft. Like, Reyna was a little soft about playing time. I do think he would be able to handle that situation a lot differently than he would at the club level. But if I'm wrong, and it is just flat out who he is, and he's not just trying to get the most out of players and the most out of clubs, and it truly is 100% his actual personality, and it's not just a work tactic, I think it could absolutely crash and burn and be a disaster, and he wouldn't even make it to the World Cup if he can't kind of tailor himself to be an international coach in the U.S.
Yeah, on a sliding scale, I'll tell you why I don't have Mourinho at the number one candidate. So Henry would be my number one candidate. Maybe hot take on our end because of his managerial history. However, I am still looking at the U.S. system as a system, and I think Jose doesn't give you the best opportunity for growth long term in the United States. I think I don't know if he would put much emphasis on working with the youngsters, or although he did, he has in the past at the club level. And I'm not asking Henry to take the U17s under his wing, but I think as far as developing the system in the United States camp, I don't think Mourinho offers the greatest value on that. In the short term, he feels very much like a win now coach, which is perfectly fine, and that's what we want in 2026. We want a perfect balance of win now, attractive soccer tactics, as attractive as you can be as the United States on the world stage, and you want somebody who's going to come in and inspire that younger generation. And Jose Mourinho might come in and say, I see a lot of potential here. I want to be the guy that's part of climbing the mountain for me is going far in the World Cup and announcing the U.S. long term on an international stage. Maybe he does do that, maybe he doesn't, but I lean towards that's probably not going to happen. Which is why I think Henry is a little bit of the better option.
I agree. I want Henry more than Jose, but I will push back a little bit on the development of the system as a whole, because he has said in multiple interviews, not in the last like couple of months, but multiple interviews over the last 10 years, that there's two things he wants to do left in his career. He wants to coach internationally, and he's specifically said he wants to come build American soccer up. Like he has
Oh, really?
vocalized the desire to come help America grow the game of soccer. And again, this was,
okay.
I want to say the interview I saw that in was from like 2011 or something like that. So it is dated. He around the same time was also asked kind of tongue in cheek by a former player when he was going to come coach the U.S. national team. And he said, not for another 20 years. And that was 10 or 11, 12 years ago now. So we haven't hit that 20-year mark. So maybe he's not fully interested yet in coming, but he has said that he does have a desire to improve the foundation of the sport in America. My guess is when he was saying that, and this is all speculation, but my guess was when he was saying that he wants to do it more of an advisory role as a retirement gig, like kind of just overarching, helping out
like a sporting director
the U.S. Federation
type
of maybe probably not even that involved. Maybe like advisor to sporting director is kind of how I interpreted
assistant
it. But he does
GM.
have right. Or what are they at Alabama football? The what are those coaches that
specialists?
The specialist. Analyst. There you go, analyst. So something like that is probably how I was interpreting more what he was talking about. But hey, if the two things he has left are wanting to build the game in the U.S. and coach internationally, he can kill two birds with one stone. I agree. Henry is my first pick. I'm just going to say it right now. This is going to be our last. Well, maybe not our last, but our last planned coaching profile. We thought about doing Vieira, but the more we talk about the guys we have talked about, it's got to be one of these three, really, because I'm not even counting Curtin. I think the most recent comments from our sporting director lead me to believe it's Jesse Marsch, who is probably my third choice. But I don't know. I don't really think there's any more exciting names out there. But really, how much more exciting can you get than Jose Mourinho and Thierry Henry?
Unless Alex Ferguson's coming out of retirement. I don't know. You got anything else on Mourinho, Dylan?
No. I would love to see Harry Potter come and manage the U.S. side if Henry won't. But we'll see how it shakes out.
Well, guys, as always, we appreciate y'all watching, listening, or however else you consume our content. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, share, duet, stitch, and I think that's it.